Okay, thank you for having me here. Thanks.
Do I go now?
Thank you.
Whose kids started doing DoorDash during COVID besides mine? Anyone's? I remember, yes, you guys. Do you remember when you heard about the neighbor kid that like went behind his parents' back and did DoorDash? Like I heard that in like 2018 and I'm like, what a bad kid. I can't believe he did that behind his parents' back. And now every single day my kids are like, hey mom, I just ordered DoorDash for myself. I don't need dinner tonight. And I'm like, sweet. Some things have changed. So that I really enjoyed that discussion. How are you guys all doing? We have 1 hour remaining. Are your legs asleep? Do you want to stand up for a minute? I was trying to think of like what could we do to like have a little break, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, or stretching, Richard Simmons, calisthenic style, but I came up with nothing. So anyway, everybody still good? Because it's heating up. We're going to have so many additional really exciting conversations in this next 1 hour. So this next one is one that I'm especially interested in, called America's Got Talent. And Dash, behind the scenes, who's going to lead the panel, said that he will be singing and his panel will be dancing. So you can expect something really interesting. So getting the right people into the right roles and making them upwardly mobile obviously is more vital than ever, right? We all know that talent is quitting their jobs at a more rapid pace than ever before. So let's talk about ideas to deliver returns on talent faster and help more Americans rise. I am excited to introduce Dash, EVP, Industry Head for Services, Utilities, Resources, and Energy at Infosys, and his amazing panel, Julia Bardmesser, SVP and Head of Data, Enterprise Architecture, and Salesforce Development at Voya, and George F. Spencer, Chief Development Officer of Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Can we give everyone a round of applause and welcome them to the stage? It was wonderful.
When all the analysts give us a very good rating, it's a very proud moment for everybody involved.
After working on a project for 3 months, I received very positive feedback from the managers who used my application.
When I was selected as a recipient of the Women of Color STEM Technology All-Star Award.
Winning Best Associate in my Client's Delivery Awards for Q2.
When the Executive Council asked me to
take the center stage like this session today. Over the last 2.5 years, what we have seen is massive shift in workplace and workforce practices. From working from offices, we moved to working remote, and then we settled somewhere in the hybrid model. Right? We were used to do degree-based hiring. We moved to skill-based hiring. We used to do location, zip code, street number hiring to find the best talent at the best place. Now what this has done, it has actually opened up a talent pool that did not have access to tech jobs in the past. It has given us a potential to expand our workforce in a way that we'd never imagined existed. Now, how do businesses go about tapping into this pool? How do you unleash the potential that this pool offers? And most importantly, how do you give them an opportunity for upward mobility that they seek and they deserve? So today's panel discussion is going to be a fascinating one on this. Every business, when you are looking at this talent pool, there are a few things that my co-panelists here will share with you, which I believe is going to be very helpful. So let me start with Julia. So Julia, of course, there is the talent demand has been skyrocketing, right, across the industry, across digital sectors. Now, as businesses start working on their talent strategy, what are some of the key things that they should consider in today's world?
I think the most important thing to consider is how do you differentiate yourself? We all have a lot of open positions now. If I do what Ray does, is poll across the room, how many positions do you have? Who has less than 10 open? No hands, right? Who has more than 50? Right? And then we can go anywhere in between. So we're all competing for very similar talent. Data, digital talent is in a very high demand right now. So how do you differentiate Voya from another company that may sound or look the same? So I think one of the pieces is, what is the value? You as a company, what's your mission statement? What do you bring to people, to your customers? How do you improve their lives? So that's, I think, is a very important statement. The other one is culture of the company. And culture of the company, what do you want to put in place? And what do you have? And how do you want to develop that? And the third piece is creativity and how you source the talent. So we all used to go, and I mean, to a certain degree, we still do that. We have the list of the requirements, and we have people, had our recruiters who look for specific lists, but you have to be creative, especially with a lot of new technologies. We had a lot of discussions here, and there is a bunch of new technologies being mentioned, like in an hour I've been sitting here, I haven't heard about. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we want to hire, some people here want to hire into those technology. How do you find people?
Yeah.
They don't exist, right? Because this is new. This is like a product that came out 3 years ago. You don't have a deep pool of talent. So how do you develop internal programs that allow you to bring people, educate people, train people, and bring adjustment skills? So there is a lot of creativity that you need to bring in how you source those positions, and be a lot more flexible and look for value where previously you may not have had to. Mm-hmm. So I think creativity, differentiation, values, that's the important points to consider.
In this supply constrained world, I think you have to be creative in how you handle. So George, coming to you, TMCF has been doing some pioneering work in creating talent of the future, right? Personally, I believe that the partnership that we signed with you today, congratulations on that, first of all.
Thank you.
Is going to be groundbreaking, right? It's this tremendous potential in this. How do you think organizations should build, nurture, and retain, most importantly, this pool of talent?
Well, I think that it's important to note that a company's competitive advantage is not just how smart the senior team is or senior management is. It's really based off of the talent within the company and what they bring. The other thing is to realize that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a key foundational element of any successful entity. And I think embracing that, embracing cultural differences, and realizing that all thinking is flawed, and understanding that the intersectionality of different cultures often comes together and creates one great thing, I think, is a key component. It's one thing to acquire talent, it's another thing to retain talent. And so companies have to get this right. They have to understand how to recruit, but they also have to understand how to evolve and grow their employees professionally so that they can become ultimately what their dreams are.
Mm-hmm. Earlier we talked about upward mobility and how the aspirations of employees have to be met. Any thoughts on that? Anything you would like to share on those lines?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we kind of touched on, backstage just briefly, is the days of jumping companies, excuse me, still exist. But often employees are looking for long-term sustainable opportunities and growth opportunities within their companies. And so it's important that employers, take an authentic approach to this by mentoring and creating immersive experiences for employees that they can now see that this maybe is not just a short-term play. There's a long-term opportunity here, and there's high growth potential here.
Great. So Julia, on this, on the point that George was raising around diversity and inclusivity and DEI in particular, I know you are very passionate about the topic. Like I was saying earlier, the workplace has changed, right? It's a lot more hybrid now, and people will be in all over the country or all over the world. How do you see DE&I changing? How do you see that impacting the DE&I goals, and what are the best practices that you recommend on that?
I think the best practices and start with foundation of respect and understanding that diversity is the source of competitive advantage. That being able to bring multiple strengths and multiple points of view together, that's what allows us to build better experience, better product for our companies and for our customers. And I think that's easy to say, but it's very hard to do. This culture of respect for different opinion is not that easy, because we like when people have a different opinion from ours, we want either get defensive or we want to argue our point.
Right.
So what you need to do as part of the company and running and leading the teams is to foster that if somebody has a different opinion, you have to understand where they're coming from and how that adds to our overall strength, as opposed to subtracting it from your position. So we need to see difference as addition to our strength, as opposed to difference as, oh my God, now I've got to defend me and my position and whatever it is I want to do. And that's a cultural shift that I think is incredibly important for companies to be successful and to build the teams that can drive us there.
Are there specific things you are doing at Voya, given the new work culture and the new workplace and talent that you're hiring?
I think I'm doing things I've always have done in terms of that fostering of the respect culture within my own teams. I think what becomes harder, it's somewhat easier to do when you're all in one place and you know people personally and people are three-dimensional people. When you have hybrid and a lot of people are just two-dimensional boxes on Zoom, it's a lot harder. So a lot of things we do, there is the whole evolution of team building exercises that we do for Zoom, and we keep trying to be creative and innovate there and, try virtual water cooler, virtual happy hours. We actually had great success with virtual Halloween party, where everybody dressed up, at least from neck up. I'm pretty sure everybody had yoga pants, but that actually brings a lot of people. You need to see humanity of people to be able to foster that respect and to be able to have those conversations about the differences or different opinions, different approaches without getting defensive. So that's one of the major things we do, and it's has to be part of the culture of the company, and where there is a huge emphasis on diversity and inclusion. And I think Voya is well known as a company of real diversity and inclusion culture.
Wonderful. And George, going back to you, we talked about HBCU and other platforms that exist today, and you work with many businesses in the country. What would you recommend for the audience here? What's the best channel to reach out to this untapped, as I said, potential, and give them the upward mobility, give them the access to tech jobs that typically did not exist?
Yeah, I think it's just being open, right? I think that the traditional ways of recruiting or acquiring talent, they still exist, but just like anything else, you need to be innovative when you recruit. If I look at some of the stats around, more specifically, the African-American community, and we talk about historically black colleges and universities and what they've produced, large percentages of black doctors, black lawyers, black members of Congress, black teachers, even at PWIs, have come from historically black colleges and universities. And so we encourage companies to think outside of the box. And your diversity strategy doesn't always have to mean we're going to get, a particular archetype of student from one of the biggest institutions. Going to get a black student from, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is great, but there's a great student down in, Ittabena, Mississippi, that has great aptitude and technology skills that can sometimes outperform some of the best recruits that you've had. And so I think having an open mindset about recruiting, being more broader approach, but intentional with your diversity recruiting and being authentic. Because when you show up to these campuses, one thing today, these students, they know if you're for real or not, right? And so presenting yourself in an authentic way, not being disingenuous, but approaching them from embracing a cultural standpoint, and then listening and understanding them, and then understanding with empathy and making sure that you give them the mentorship and the tools to be successful. Because in this demographic, sometimes they're first generation corporate, right? And they're the first in their families to go to school. And so embracing that and understanding that and what that means is they may be a little rough around the edges, but taking the time to, again, mentor and help them navigate to ultimately be successful and competitive in the space.
Wonderful. One of the things we are doing at Infosys is to not just focusing on the current skills, but look at the potential, right? Can this person learn things? And if yes, then probably we have a bridge program to take them through and make the individual successful through very strong training curriculum. And that's the way to kind of bridge the gap between the access to technology, learning for them, to where you are today and what you expect them from, right? Any specific challenges you foresee in this model? Anything that people should watch out for?
No, I think, the wave of the future is predictive analytics and determining higher probabilities of success. So I think you guys are spot on with it. I think we use data for so much more, but we don't often use the data where it impacts positive outcomes or fosters positive outcomes for our employees. And so I think the model of assessing aptitudes is great, but again, algorithmic biases, have to be avoided here, and we have to understand that, there's not a one-size-fits-all model. And so once companies can grasp that and truly embrace the cultural differences that everyone brings to the table, I think it'll be a much better, comprehensive workforce.
Wonderful. And Julia, when we look at the new employees, if you're going out there in the market and we're trying to attract them, other than the traditional lures, traditional things that you used to say, I think there's a lot more these days that they look for, right? They look for a purpose. They look for, are you a sustainable business? Are you doing things for the society and the planet at large? Any advice from your experience, how you position the company in that forum?
And I agree, and I think people are just, my daughter just joined the workforce, and she looked at all of those things, and it was very important to her. And I think it goes back to one of the first comments I've made. It's about differentiating your company based on the mission statement from other companies. And it's not only the company itself, it's also within the team that you're hiring for. What makes this place to be a good place to be? Is it promotion opportunities? Can you grow within this place? Are there opportunities to learn more? A lot of people are driven not so much by hierarchical growth, but ability to learn different skills, ability to learn different technologies. Like we hire technologies, they're really into cool stuff. So what they want to know, am I going to have an ability to learn new cool stuff as it comes along? Or are you doing the same things over and over again? So when you interview, highlighting that, highlighting the value the team, the program brings to the company within the overall value statement of the company itself, I think becomes really important. And again, being really creative about location, about the adjustment skills. Like I fell into data by accident. I was just, out of college, assigned to work that was more data-driven, and I had no idea that I had any aptitude for data. It turned out I did, and now it's 20-something years later. That's a lot of what I do is data. So a lot of people don't know they want to be doing data. They don't know they have aptitude for data, and they would enjoy it. So being very open-minded and building a case, again, on differentiation of value, on cool tech that they can learn, and ability to learn and grow and bring value to the business, I think is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And I think that's one of the things, right? So you bring in at a junior level, or you bring in at a very early stage and give them an opportunity to grow, learn, and grow. That way, you're giving them a career path rather than a job, right? Yeah. George, from your perspective, any insights on that? Any inputs on that?
Yeah, I mean, I look at my own trajectory. I think we briefly talked about this, Dash. In 1993, my mother sent a computer. She bought a computer. It was sent to the house. Right. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked computers. And so my father and I sat down and we looked at what were the top 5 jobs going to be in the year 2000. And I knew I had an interest, but it wasn't developed, right? Or I didn't have someone in my family that could show me the way around technology. But I went to school and I graduated with a degree in computer science. And fortunately for me, I had a gentleman who took me under his wing, and he developed me from a technical standpoint. And it all started with that interest, though. And unfortunately, if you don't have that advocate or that I'll call him an angel, you know, for lack of better terms, that exists within corporations, sometimes that talent gets lost. And you know, I think companies that are identifying, we have a kind of a three-pronged approach. We identify, develop, and deploy talent. Now, we do that for our partners, but we also do it internally when we're recruiting talent. You know, we identify them, you know, and kind of assess where they are and what their interests are. Then we develop them, right? And then for us, we, you know, a lot of times deploy them out to companies, but internally we deploy them into a situation that we think they will not only survive, but they'll thrive in.
Wonderful. And as part of TMCF, I know you work with more than 300,000 students in the country.
Yeah.
Of course, the mentoring and reaching out to them needs to happen from corporates who want to tap into that talent. Is that the best practice? Is that how it should be?
It is a good practice. I think mentorship, as I mentioned, is a key foundational element of success for young people, and especially for the demographic that we serve. I think it's widely practiced, but I think it needs to be refined, and it needs to be very, very intentional, you know, based off, again, of cultural differences and the needs of the company.
Wonderful. So I'll just squeeze in the last question for us. We're almost at time. Any don't do's, any advice, any takeaways for the audience that absolutely doesn't work, or you know, this is definitely going to work? Any final word from you, Julia?
I think I'm going to echo your words, authenticity. So don't do it just because it's now fashionable to do it, because people see when you're just pretending and doing it for the check mark. So do it because you believe in it.
Yeah.
And again, respect is incredibly important. And that respect should underpin any of the D&I efforts that the company has. Again, and do it for real.
I would say continuously, you know, there's a term in technology, continuous improvement, right? Continuously improve on unconscious bias. That's one of the biggest barriers to success. And for any corporation looking for, you know, to move the needle on diversity. And so continue to do that, continue to be authentic, and continue to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, be authentic about it.
Wonderful. So in conclusion, I think if you really want to tap into this pool that was probably not accessible before, be authentic, don't do it as a check mark, and continuous improvement in terms of biases. And you need to tap into this talent. So wonderful. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for sharing your views. This concludes the final discussion. Thank you very much.
It was amazing. Great job. To all of this. And I also want to point out that